Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Right every time. We get it right all the time because we are together here on the edge. Okay?
Absolutely.
That's
here
right.
We are.
This is the place, Brains. Right here. This is the spot. You done check back in where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Today, our guest is Jenny Gough from Canada. She is an environmental engineer. That's right. Cheers. We was talking about that. See, everybody don't get a cup. These are limited edition, baby. You can't buy these. How about that?
No, that's right. They're for brains.
Really? So she's a brain. And we're going to talk about the work that she does with the environment. She's done some unusual stuff. I'm going to tell you about that. But she's also a budding author in her fourth attempt to rewrite the perfect book. And she laughs about that, but I told her, I said, it's like giving birth. Well, maybe not this time, because I don't think you have to try 4 times to give birth. It just comes
One would hope not.
Exactly. But you know what? It is giving birth to your words, to your thoughts, to your creativity. And when you write a book, you're not writing it for you, you're writing it for the reader. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. She's going to give us some great environmental tips. I'm going to talk to her about what in the world is fracking. What does that do to the environment? We're going to talk about what happens up under the sea, all of that waste that we're throwing away, and what can we do to save the planet? Because as she explained to me, some things are just irreversible, but what can we do to sustain it? So help me welcome her to the edge, Miss Jenny Gough. Hi, baby.
Thank you so much, April. I'm honored to be here, and I'm grateful to be your guest. So thank you so much for having me on your show. And as you mentioned, I'm an environmental engineer and the chairman of the International Association of Environmental Professionals. I think that's something that we haven't talked about.
Wow!
And I'm also
you in the chair. You sit at the table, girl.
Yeah, I sit at the head of the table for that one.
Wow! Wow!
Yeah. And I'm also an author, so I'm writing a book about authenticity. So we'll talk about all those things. We've got lots of time, right?
We sure do. We sure do. Because time is a mere illusion anyway, and it seems to have stopped right now with this COVID. Let's start with that.
Well, I have to disagree. I think time is like, I'm a scientist, so time is a finite unit of measure.
You believe that? I believe it's an illusion that somebody came up with to track us.
Yeah, I do believe, in units of measure.
And I get it. So you're going to take me there too. But tell us a little bit about, let's start with your beginnings. How in the world did you become an environmental engineer?
Well, that goes all the way back sort of to my childhood. So I did start very young in the environmental field. I always loved the environment, even going through high school into university. I did chemical engineering as an undergrad, but the environment sort of pulled me in. And I think my great uncle was the director of the Central Experimental Farm for Canada. And he always taught me that protection of the environment and protection of our resources is paramount for the future of life on Earth. So I always believe that the future of humanity is dependent on the greenness of the Earth. And that's where I focused my efforts as an environmental engineer, is helping people to do better by the environment. So now I work in the consulting field, where I'm basically advising companies and helping companies to solve their environmental issues and to do better on that green bottom line.
Is that a global thing that you're doing, or is that, just primarily for Canada? Because you said you sit at the head of the table, you're the chair. So is that work that's done globally?
Well, there's two different companies there, April, and I've actually got a third environmental related company as well, which is a training organization. Locally, in Sarnia, Ontario, is where I work in the field. So boots on the ground, spill response, cleaning up messes, so to speak, and advising companies locally. The International Association of Environmental Professionals is an organization dedicated to upskilling environmental professionals for, so that they can embrace different areas of their career and expand and develop their knowledge and skills for a really economical price. So that's the mandate of the International Association. So they're two completely different organizations. And then there's the training organization, which is EnviroTrain. And that's shifting over to all online, because obviously with COVID, the world has changed in the way we train people. So,
what are we training people to do? Because they're not paying attention. As I travel around the world, before COVID, I didn't see really a lot of, I don't know, effort to sustain what we have. Went to some countries, no recycling whatsoever. They're still burning plastic, trash. We're concerned about the ozone layer. We're concerned about global warming. We're concerned about contaminated water. There's so many concerns. As you explained to me previously, is that some things are irreversible.
They absolutely are irreversible, particularly like habitat loss. You can't come back from that once you've gone beyond a tipping point. And that's not just on, terrestrial ecosystems, that's also marine and submarine ecosystems as well. Once they're damaged beyond a certain point, you can't retrieve that. So where we need to go, I think,
let me kind of dial back for my brains that don't kind of understand where we are. So you're talking things like the coral reef, or you're talking about things like the horrible burn that they had in Australia and the wild.
Yeah, and in the US, they've had similar horrible burns. And yeah, the coral reef, and yeah, the mass deforestation, not just by fire, but also by using, resources from the forests. And when we take away that, we're not just taking away the trees, we're taking away the whole ecosystem. So we're taking away the birds and the bees and the animals and the food sources that live there. So it's, it gets to the point where you can't come back from that. And you can't replant new growth and say, okay, well, that ecosystem is going to regenerate, because that's taken, hundreds or thousands of years to come to what it was. And then, it gets taken away by, in some cases you can't help a devastating weather incident or something, although there's a school of thought that would say that man is responsible for a lot of those devastating weather incidents as well. But if you're consciously going out and saying, well, I'm going to harvest that entire rainforest, or I'm going to deliberately pollute the coral reef, you're consciously making a choice to cause that pollution and to cause that damage and devastation. And, if you look at refineries and chemical plants worldwide, you could say back then, in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, when everything was ramping up, they didn't know what the impact of their actions was going to be. Right. But we do know now. The knowledge is here now. And we're still making components like, perfluoroalkylated substances, for instance. It's a big buzzword in certain communities that are being affected by it. But from other people's point of view, they're looking at it as, oh, Teflon and Scotchgard, and these things help me, therefore they're good. But we're not looking at the long-term effects of what those chemicals do to humans and to animals and to ecosystems. So, and some people are looking at it and other people are not. So it's really
are looking beyond it because they're getting paid on it. Let's talk about fracking. Fracking is big here in the United States now, and everyone is talking about it. It's big on the political agenda, as far as sustainable energy and oils and gas. Tell us a little bit about that, what it does to the earth, and what is it?
Well, fracking is using basically high pressure fluid, in most cases water, sometimes other substances, to open up fissures in the ground and more easily release the oil and gas. So in a way, it's revolutionized the energy sector because it's now making it so much more economical to get out mass resources of oil and gas. So the communities are benefiting from that. They're benefiting from lower energy costs and increased, work. There's a lot more work when you can actually extract resources from the ground and process them and sell them. So that's good for the economy, but at the same time, the damage to groundwater, surface water, ecosystems, and the harm from the air and water pollution coming from that is in my mind, it's a negative balance. Other people may disagree and say it's positive. You get more from fracking than what you take away. But I would necessarily agree with that. I would say, every community has to weigh it up. But from an environmental standpoint, I'm not a fan.
Well, and again, you are tapping into the core. I mean, the very core of the planet.
Right. Yeah. So you're sort of reaching into that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're not going down that deep, but you're definitely getting into things that if the earth wanted us to be in there, it would open up.
Wow. That's crazy. Talking about opening up, will you tell these people how you have done work down in the sewer? Now, okay, I saw the show one of America's Worst Jobs. And can you imagine this pretty thing right here with a helmet and hazmat suit down in the sewer? I would have had a fit. Okay, forget all of the feces and all the other stuff that's going through there. But let me see a family of rats. I'm done. What is the reason that you are down there? What are you doing? I mean, because I went to let me tell you this first, Brains, before I let her talk. I went to the new plant that we have here, recycling water. They told me that the water that goes through our pipes has been through those pipes about 385 times. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to take sewer water and refine it to make it into regular drinking water that's going to go through our faucets here. And I just couldn't believe it. But then too, I don't know what's in bottled water. Okay, I haven't seen them manufactured. I haven't seen them tested. So tell me a little bit about, number one, how in the world you got down there. Number two, what are you doing down there? And number three, what do we expect from what's down there?
Right. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different questions there that I can address. But in terms of the plant that you went to visit, that's awesome that you went to visit it. I love hearing that, because I really think that people need to become aware and educate themselves as to where their water comes from and what's going on in the state of the water world. Because the water cycle, is a natural cycle where you have evaporation and then it rains. So basically people look at that and say, oh, the clouds are bringing the rain. And that's bringing us water, and that's going in the recharged groundwater. But what they're doing in a lot of areas of the world is recharging groundwater with sewage or treated sewage, so that can be reused. So, and there's all sorts of reclamation and reuse schemes for water, because really the total amount of water that we have uncontaminated and available for drinking, or not salty and available for use in production and in agriculture and for our own personal needs, it's a finite amount, and it's shrinking as we contaminate water. That amount of water that we have for our own use is shrinking. So, looking at desalination and reclamation, they're awesome projects and really super fascinating. Now, from the other questions, in terms of sewers, my first job at a university as an engineer was in a wastewater treatment plant. And then from there, I was taking care of many small treatment plants. And then I moved into industrial wastewater as well. So, working with human waste basically was certainly an eye-opener for a young recent graduate out of university. And you sort of get used to it. But what I did find going into that field, it's not just chemistry and it's not just environmental science, but it's also biology, because you have all the bugs that are consuming. It's a natural process. It's basically like the same way that a septic tank works is how most treatment plants work. And then with all the UV filtration and everything, they can get that water pretty clean. Not sure that I'm ready to drink it right out of the effluent line.
I wasn't ready either. And they said, okay, it's time to test it. And I was like, oh, Lord. I said, I'm going to end up in the hospital.
But you didn't.
I went in for it, Brains. I took the bullet for you. And I tasted it, and I looked at the plant, and I looked at it, and they had compared it with bottled water, and their water, it looked a lot clearer and cleaner. And I'm saying, there's a lot of chlorine, there's a lot of bleach in here. What are they doing? But again, you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so now you're down there, and you're taking these samples, and you're coming back up, and you're testing them. What is the purpose of that? What are you looking for?
For any quality testing, it depends on where you are, really. So in the treatment plants where I worked, the effluent line was discharging into the ocean. So it had to meet a certain quality standard. So the plant would, basically take the samples off the effluent line and throughout the process to make sure that the process was running smoothly. And then at the other end where it's discharging into the ocean, you don't want to do more harm than good. And in another conversation that you and I had, we were talking about licenses to pollute. And that's exactly the case. Like it's only illegal to pollute if you don't have a license to do so. And it's only illegal to release contaminants into the environment if you don't have a license to do so. But those licenses take into variables, considerations of what can the environment handle and naturally assimilate. So when you're discharging into the ocean, you've got, your large body of water, so you have massive dilution. You have the sunlight and wind and wave action, so you have a lot of mixing. And then you also have the UV coming from the sun, which gives extra treatment. So in a way, the majority of what's going out there is getting treated further. If there's any contaminants left, it's getting treated further in some cases. In other cases, you have things like heavy metals or man-made substances like the PFAS that we talked about earlier, or chlorinated compounds that aren't necessarily easy to biodegrade and are not necessarily going to go anywhere depending on, what surface water body or where they've been discharged. In some places they take the biosolids, which is the solid component of the, what's left over after all the water goes out, and they're spreading it on agricultural land, which is then growing, food for animals or for people. So it's a never-ending cycle. And that's why we have to be cautious about what we're putting down the drain.
Well, okay. You look at a person, let's use an example, that mops their floor. They put a little bleach, they put a little, I don't want to use a particular product name, but you put some stuff in there to make it smell good and all that kind of stuff. And then they pour it right down the drain. Stuff is going right into the ocean. It's going right into the sewer. Or you look at the military ships. Yeah, I'm gonna call you out, military. Dumping over the side. All of their plastics, just endless amounts. I just saw that they got 40 tons of plastic off the bottom of the ocean. That's just what they were able to harvest. That's not talking about what people were throwing.
That's a drop in the bucket for what's in the ocean in terms of plastics and garbage and metals and glass waste. There's, the ocean has been a big dumping ground for a lot of years, which, the ocean has a capacity to treat certain things, but some of the things that we dispose of as humans, like the packaging, in some cases you buy products and it's wrapped 5 or 6 times and then it's put in a box and it's got, styrofoam bubbles and then another box over top of it and then plastic wrap. And you think, why all this packaging? And, in some cases it's food. You have individually boxed little things, each wrapped and then put together in a big box, all wrapped in plastic, and go buy, and they put it in a plastic bag and hand it to you as you walk out the door.
Right.
And, really all you needed to do is just go buy a bag of raisins or get, your food from the market and put it in your own recyclable bag.
Okay, here in the US, we have the recyclable bags. Okay, so now no plastic. They don't want styrofoam cups. They don't want the plastic bags. But you go in the grocery store, you can't take the plastic bag. But what do you do when you grab your produce? You take 10 or 15 plastic bags.
Plastic bags.
Okay? I don't do that anymore. I had a beautiful basket one of my African friends gave me. I shop in the basket. Plus, I feel like I'm kind of European and kind of chic because I have this basket. But when I come home, I rinse my produce. I put it right in the drawer. It's no problem. I don't need the plastic bags. We can't have straws now. Now the straws are paper straws, which are horrible because it's all flimsy afterwards. So I don't even use a straw anymore. But those little basic things that people don't think about, like running the water. That's another thing. Don't waste water. Did she just explain to us about water brains? My niece will come here and brush her teeth. It seems like 5 minutes and the water is running for what? And I asked her, why are you running the water? Get a little cup of water, rinse your mouth, spit it out, and be done with it. I like the sound of the water. I told her, get over it. Get over it. So
You
it's
need to get her one of those recycling waterfalls and just put that in the bathroom.
I'm gonna put her hand under the water next time. Things like that, it just annoys me down into my core. These are some of the simplest things, and you can teach your children how not to be wasteful. It's what we
You
do.
know what my biggest pet peeve is with human behavior in the environment is littering.
Mm.
And flicking cigarette butts on the ground or spitting out gum on the ground. And you think, who raised you? Who raised you to do that?
Wow. Oh, no, you know what is really a killer? Now that we all have to wear these masks, I went for my walk this morning. I kid you not. Between here, the park, and back, I counted 22 masks.
No.
22.
That's ridiculous.
And I'm saying the purpose of this is to contain the virus and to dispose of it properly. Take the mask off and throw it in the trash. Plastic gloves, take them off and throw them in the trash.
In the trash. Yeah.
But when you throw them in the trash, they go to the landfill. Tell us a little bit about your knowledge of what goes on in a landfill. How do they decompose all of that to go back into the earth? Because, you're putting your ketchup bottle in there, you're putting your relish things in there, you're putting your toothpaste in there. That stuff is not biodegradable.
No, generally it's not. So in some cities or some municipalities, they recycle a lot of those plastics and do a really good job of waste separation. In other cases, there's not a great separation. There's not necessarily the municipal budget to take care of doing that waste separation. So you wind up with everything just going into a landfill and then having the mass capped. And in that landfill, you have, organisms working away at decomposing what it can. And that shrinks the mass. So then everything gets flattened down and more gets put on top and then capped again.
Okay, and of course, when you say they put a chemical on top of that to help the decompose, the break up?
No, not generally. Not generally a chemical. It's normally natural organisms that are present.
Really?
Yeah. So, and most of them are methane generating. Pardon me?
Glass can break down?
No, glass isn't going to break down. No, you're going to need to crush up that glass and recycle it.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to carry on because I want my brain to really think about this because I'm a recycler, and I look at my trash before I take it out. And you got to put a certain kind of plastic here and a certain kind of plastic there. But what has happened in the US again is that we've made ugly with China and they are shutting down our recycling plants because we'll pack it up, we'll send it over to China, China will melt it down and do whatever they do, send it back to us so that we can refill these containers once again. But now they're angry. So now they don't even want to take our recycling. So our recycling plants are closing down. So I look at that and then I look at compost. I don't like the smell of garbage at all.
Nobody does. And maybe that's why it's being sent to China. But if you think about it, is that right? To ship our waste or the US waste overseas to be processed. I know there's a big not in my backyard philosophy that exists. People don't want to see that locally, but think about the fuel resources being consumed in shipping that waste over to China for reuse or for recycling. And, recycling plants aren't necessarily difficult to design and build. And like I said, some municipalities are really great at separating waste and treating it independently and recycling what they can. Other municipalities are really great at having people separate their waste and then they throw it all together in the same landfill anyway, because they don't have the facilities in place yet to recycle it. So, that is interesting in and of itself. Then if you think that's just municipal solid waste, and in some cases, when we were talking about burning garbage earlier, in some cases, incineration with the right environmental emission controls is a better option than landfilling, which, especially if you're harvesting the power from that and using it to, make it completely energy neutral.
Right.
Same thing with the landfill, with the methane generating organisms. We're collecting the methane off of that and using that for power generation as well. So
right.
So
let's talk about your trip to India.
Okay.
I was not, Brains, I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't mature enough to handle it. There was a lot going on over there. Okay. Beautiful people, beautiful culture, beautiful jewelry, beautiful spirituality, but extreme poverty. I mean, extreme poverty. When you talk about stench of garbage, I couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't really even leave the hotel very much. Um, in addition to that, is that you see mounds and mounds and mounds of garbage that they are going through to try to salvage to for whatever reason, if they need it or trying to sell it or whatever. It's just incredible, and that's just one place. But beyond that, you found a healing because you were a woman with a brain
Okay.
tumor, and
That's true.
you went to
Mhm.
India to do some Ayurveda medicine and to do a cleansing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I went to a different part of India than you did. I was in the south of India in Kerala, and while this you still see a lot of poverty there, it's a little bit different than the big cities in India. So I found it beautiful and really healing to be there. I like I said, I went for Ayurvedic treatment for a brain tumor that I had and no longer have, which makes me very happy. So I think that that experience changed my life, and it changed the way that I look at everything in terms of how I do my work and how I schedule my day and what's important and what isn't in my life. And really, I found the meaning of life in India. And that I know that sounds a little bit strange, but I believe we all have the same purpose here. We all are here to learn and grow and develop our talents and skills and our knowledge as much as we can and share that with as many people as we can. So I went to India as, thinking of it as strictly medical treatment, going to an Ayurvedic clinic, and I was going to focus on my healing. And I left there with a really wide open conscious and like a whole new raft of experiences, including the knowledge that I can't eat Indian food.
Well, and I couldn't eat a cheeseburger because they honor the cow, and I was hot about it. Like, can I have a steak or something? No, we're not doing that. But again, when you went through this process of healing and cleansing,
Mhm.
not only was it spiritual, but you did a lot of physical things. Explain to us a little bit about that. Was a lot of meditation? Did you go through sweat lodges, massage?
Well,
What kind of?
Ayurvedic treatment is really different for everybody and every condition. There are a lot of different facets for the physical aspect of Ayurvedic treatment, but the detox process is what I sort of went through. And yeah, it did involve, a lot of heat and sweating and herbal treatments and massage. And it's, not the massage that you go for to your local spa and have a nice friendly massage. It's pretty intense stuff. So there was a few days there that I was really, really sick. And really, I think because I'd had chemotherapy for a couple of years, there was a lot of a toxin buildup in my body that had to get out. Anyways, we don't want to talk about that anymore.
No,
But
but because there are people that are going to have to go through that. So,
absolutely.
and,
Hmm.
and some people come out stellar. Everybody's not the same, but
Yeah, and I
what
would
know that
really
alternatives.
I would definitely recommend it, looking into it for anybody who has any health condition or mental health condition, because it's a three-legged stool, it's like mind, body, and spiritual wellness. And that is the foundation of yoga, and it's the foundation of Ayurveda. So for me, it was life-changing. And out of that is where my book spawned. So being Canadian, I'm, sort of naturally modest in terms of disrobing or not.
Right.
And my book is called Getting Naked because basically on the first day it was like, drop your drawers and sit on the stool naked. And, and there's people walking around, there's therapists, and I was like super uncomfortable. I'm sitting there like, oh, what's going on? So, twice a day for a few weeks of that. And eventually you got used to getting naked. But while I was there, I really found I got used to it on a physical point of view, but I also was getting naked with myself in terms of
Right.
stripping away all the layers of who I wasn't and who I thought I was supposed to be, but who I really wanted to be. And I think a lot of people go through life not even knowing what they want in their life or what they're here for. They just go through day by day by rote because that's what they do until they die. And, I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said most people live till 75, but they actually die at 25 or something along those lines. And
Wow.
it's true, because if you're not living a life worth living, you're not living your life at all. And I should write that down. Actually, that's a pretty good quote.
Yeah, right now, go and get your pen, because that's a quote. You can actually, you might be able to put that on a t-shirt.
There you go. I could, and I'll send it to you.
And
Yeah.
but there's a lot, and I'm so glad that you were able to realize your vulnerability and embrace it. People don't want
Absolutely.
to admit that, hey, I'm weak in a certain area, or I need to grow here, or this is something that I don't understand, or this is something that I'm afraid of. That is it. And that is what you do. Scientists ask the questions, brains. It's a never ending cycle of asking the question and trying to figure out the answer, because we're
That's right.
evolving and
That's right.
changing.
Yeah.
But you are very science-based. And so there's a lot of people that, like when we started this conversation, we started talking about time. You said time is finite, and I say, it's an illusion, because now is the perfect pause with COVID. Okay. Everybody's brakes have been pumped. I don't care how pretty you are. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care who you know, your circle of influence. Everybody has to stop right now. What has this experience taught you?
Well, honestly, I think it's not just necessarily a pause. It was kind of a huge slap in the face in terms of you're not in control of where you can travel or where you can go. There's things that are happening outside of our control that, we may have thought that we had under control or in perfect control or had a say in. And I think those things, it's been a bit of a rude awakening to realize that, I can't just hop on a plane and, travel overseas if I want to. And, I can't go to my grocery store and not wear a mask. I can't have 50 people over for Thanksgiving. I saw a thing on Facebook that was, I can have 30 people at a funeral, but only 6 at my table for Thanksgiving. So I'm going to have a funeral for my turkey, which is,
well, that's cute. That was cute.
it was worded better than that, but it was pretty funny. But, for me, I'm still working. I'm still running businesses. I'm still writing reports. I'm still doing the things that I always did.
This with a deeper sense of learning, with a deeper sense of compassion, with a stronger immune system, with some sort of vaccine that you'll probably have to take every year. And if you don't have health insurance, you're not getting it anyway. I just had to throw that in there too. But you have been able to travel the world, and you've been very fortunate that you've been able to go to a faraway land and get the best medical treatment. And you have had the best education, and that you are sitting at the head of the table as a woman making decisions on environmental issues. But what do you say to the underserved and overlooked that don't have the privileges that you've had as a woman? And as they call it here in America, the white privilege. What do you say to those people that are struggling?
Right. Well, I honestly don't know that being a woman in the field that I'm in is an advantage, because it's always been, especially graduating in the 90s, when it was always an old boys club. So pushing through as an engineer, female engineer, young, was never an easy fight. And I think that's probably where a lot of my illness came from. That's not entirely right. I think when I was in India, stripping away those shells and that hard exterior, I think that hard exterior came from having to always prove myself as a woman, that I'm competent to be an engineer, and I'm competent to not just be an engineer, but to be your engineer and to give you good advice on how to manage your environmental issues. Pardon me. But I think from the point of view of privilege, in terms of, going through schooling, I paid for my own education going through, and I did that because I scooped ice cream when I was 13 years old and socked money into the bank. And, I came from a split family where my mom didn't have a lot of money for us growing up, my sister and I, and definitely very privileged to have grown up in Canada and attended university in Canada. and very privileged to have, spent so much time in Australia working and living there. But I think in a lot of cases, you can either let your situation keep you down, or you can get out of that situation through your own actions. And persistence is key, and having an open mind is key, and taking advantage of opportunities as they're presented to yourself. Because you don't need to have a lot of money to get a university degree. You don't need to have a university to get the knowledge that comes behind that degree. So you might need the degree to do certain jobs, but other jobs or other careers or other paths, you don't necessarily need to have a piece of paper from a university. And all of that knowledge is available in libraries and on the internet. Really, like the Google has opened up, so many doors. We didn't have Google when I was a kid.
Right. We were looking at the encyclopedia.
Oh yeah, Encyclopedia Britannica.
Your family had to purchase that, and they had to make payments sometime to get it.
That's exactly true. It was like the family heirloom, the encyclopedia got passed down, and every year there was an update book.
Yep.
I remember our first computer was like, I don't know what it was, but like probably a 186 or something, in this clunky old thing. And, you could program a man skiing down a hill, and that's basically all it could do with it, or make colorful pictures.
Or the cell phone was a brick. Yes, we're dating ourselves, Brains. Like my Jamaican friends say, you can have as many degrees as a thermometer and still not know what temperature it is.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah.
So, you have to do the work, Brains. Nobody's going to do it for you. Everybody thinks that, I'm going to take care of you. It's about survival. And, God blesses a child that's got his own. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer Gough, on the Edge with us. Please tell my brains how to get in contact with you. When that book is out, this is the first place. I want the exclusive.
All right. You got it.
I want people to know what it is inside the pages of that book, because you are you're tough. You're tough. You're not sloppy seconds at all. And I'm so
thanks, April. I appreciate that. You're not sloppy seconds either, sister. So to get in contact with me, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Tell us how to get in contact with you.
To get in contact with me, you can find me at, or email me at jenny@jennygough.com. So that's JENNY@JENNYGOUGH.com. Or go to my new website for my Think Elite program, which is all about higher level thinking for brains. And that's think-elite.net. So you can find me there. And thank you again for that conversation.
And I am so glad that you are here and that you are well.
Me too.
You are feeling good, and that you're doing the work that you do, not only for you, but for the entire planet. For the entire planet.
Thank you. Thank you. I really hope that even just a tiny iota of what I do makes a difference to the planet, because that has been my life's mandate, is to learn as much as I can about the earth and help it as much as I can in terms of, providing advice or cleaning things up or training others to do it.
You gave me some great tips, some things that I'm looking at now. I'm not sure if I really kind of want the water from the treatment plant, but I'm here. I survived it, and I didn't get, diarrhea. So,
that's good. That's good. But there are places in the world that's their water source. They're taking it directly out of rivers where upstream someone's dumping into it. So they don't have the privilege of treatment plants. So that's
they're doing it right here in Mexico. We get notices all the time that the water is contaminated, that the sewer is spilling over into our oceans. You can't go surfing. You can't go to the beach for days. But the ecosystem, as you said, as the tide comes in and goes out, it washes it, it purifies it. But how long is that going to last? How long is it?
Well, that's the thing. Once it reaches the tipping point, it can't do it anymore. It's just like the human body. Once you've pushed it beyond its capacity, it can't heal from a certain point, Right. So we have to take care of ourselves, we have to take care of each other, and we have to take care of the earth.
Yep. And the body dies, but the spirit lives on. And thank you for being a spirited person here with me on the edge. You are awesome sauce. Brains, I ask that you go in and subscribe to everything, especially the YouTube channel, because we've got almost 300 episodes, okay? And I need to have thousands and thousands more people connecting with that. Go back and check Edgy Conversations on Blog Talk Radio. You can find us on iTunes, LinkedIn, all over the planet and Facebook. Again, go out and check out Jenny's stuff because she's super smart. I love you guys from the bottom of my socks because my heart just isn't deep enough. Bye.
Farewell.